I have to sneeze, I think.
Let's go.
What's up, everybody? Kier Gomes here, and welcome back. Today's episode is going to be quite a good one, and I say that because we're going to be reviewing The Good Company cross-collaboration with FONTAINE. This is a deck that I could not wait to review, and I wanted to keep my tradition of reviewing all of the FONTAINE cards alive, so with all that, I figured I couldn't pass up the opportunity to review this deck. My hand is pretty much at a healed point. I'm basically at a point where I can use cards again and it doesn't bother me too much. Before we get started, please do drop a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Alright, so the FONTAINE The Good Company collaboration deck. The Good Company is an apparel company based out of New York. FONTAINE is known for collaborating with unique or hype clothing designers and design brands, so this really does fall into the right category for FONTAINE. It keeps kind of their theme alive. And honestly, I like it. I mean, usually when FONTAINE collaborates with other brands, for example, like Carrots, Rip and Dip, Chinatown Market, and Guess, all of those decks come out really, really cool, and I like the design of all of them. And usually when that happens, the FONTAINE decks are a lot more custom when they collaborate with other brands, so I like that even more. This deck is no exception, so let's take a look at it. The tuck box is done in glossy cardstock. You can see that it has a very nice kind of turquoise, dark forest green color that wraps around the sides, back, bottom, top, the whole deck. The front has a border around it in white, and it says The Good Company in this really cool kind of childhood cursive. I really like that. And as well, if you take a close look at the front and back of the tuck box, you can see these little wavy lines that actually make up a nice texture for the back of the cards, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. One side of the deck says fontainecards.com, and the other one says 97allen.com. That would be the website for FONTAINE and the website for The Good Company. The side has some ad copy about the distribution of this deck. The bottom says Good Co. And the top says FONTAINE in the usual FONTAINE font. Of course, the back design is the back design of the cards. You do get two Good Company logos on the inside small tongue flaps, and then the FONTAINE Ace of Spades silhouette that you would normally see on a FONTAINE deck. Alright, so that's everything in terms of the box, so let's get to what we're here for. Ooh. Your back design looks like this. Typical white border FONTAINE deck. Quite thin on the borders, which I really like. It has the white FONTAINE Fs mirrored in the middle, just like all FONTAINE decks. And again, if you take a look at the close-up, you can see this really interesting wavy line, almost like the Flux deck, that adds some texture to the back of this deck. Now, it's no secret that at this point, FONTAINE could have just printed any deck and it would have sold out. But you can tell that a lot of effort went into the design of this deck because honestly, even if they would have printed it on just this turquoise color, it still would have been an awesome looking deck and it definitely still would have sold. I think adding the layer of texture there was a really, really smart idea though, because it does help this deck stand out among other FONTAINE decks. Your Ace of Spades looks like this. It does have semi-standard indices, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And then you can see it says The Good Company in cursive right there in the middle. And it is done in gray, and it's almost like a kind of 1950s pop comic book type aesthetic. It's kind of almost like hand-drawn, but with those little polka dots on the inside that make it look very, very comic booky. And guess what? I'm into it. You do get two identical Jokers. They have the kind of comic booky silhouettes of two police officers, and they say 12 in each corner, and Joker at the bottom. Those are super, super cool Jokers. I really, really like that. FONTAINE's Jokers have always been pretty boring on their regular decks, so these custom ones though look really nice. Like look at how good that looks with the pink and the yellow. I love that. Love that. As well, you do kind of get a duplicate set of Jokers, but these are really just the ad cards or the extra cards that come with the deck. You can see one of them is kind of a drawing of the outside of the Good Company store in New York City. Really like the use of the teal and yellow together. It looks really good. And the other one is two people shaking hands, and it says The Good Company below it. That would probably be, if I had to guess, a representation of Zach or FONTAINE collaborating with The Good Company. This deck does not come with any ad cards or gaff cards. The only ad cards really are these two. I would say they're kind of just duplicate jokers, but I like that. I really like the design of those cards. I think they look nice, very artistic. It's something that if you're not going to use them, you could hang them on your wall. And that's good stuff. All right, now this deck is fully custom on the faces, so we got quite a bit to talk about. All of the cards on this deck are completely custom. You can see the spades and clubs are done in black and kind of light gray. They do have these really nice polka dots making the shape of the pip with an outline that's slightly off-centered with it, adding to this kind of sketched out vibe. I really, really like the way that the cards look. As well, your hearts and diamonds have that same aesthetic, only they're done in a nice kind of soft red color. Everything from the pips, indices, and font of the cards would be standard if not for this design. Your court cards also have a USPCC standard aesthetic, but they have been updated to reflect only the colors black, gray, and red. And as well, the pips and indices have that same customization that you saw on the other faces. Like, look how dope that is. That's awesome. So this is a deck, obviously it's Fontaine, it's primarily geared for cardistry, but I mean, it is one of those decks where if you wanted to perform magic with it, you definitely could. The customization is subtle and it's unique, but at the same time, I think it's easily recognizable. And as well, for this deck, it's kind of necessary. All right, so that's pretty much it for how the deck looks. Let's switch angles and talk about how it handles. All right, so in terms of handling, this deck is what you would expect from the United States Playing Card Company. It is on crushed bicycle stock, so it is fairly thin. Very soft. This was actually one of those decks where as soon as you get it out of the box, it was basically broken in for you, which I've said this before, this is something that we've come to kind of expect from the USPCC. I've been using this deck for about a week, so it is a little bit worn in and a little bit clumpy, but overall still looks really good in standard flourishes. After a week of use, this is what the deck looks like in a fan. As you can see with the thin borders, it is kind of hard to hide when the cards clump up. But in general, there's nothing super spectacular about the fan of this deck. It looks pretty much what you would expect. You just see that really beautiful green color coming through with those thin borders. I would open a new deck and show you what a brand new fan looks like, but it's just one of those things where there's really no point. This deck is far from being cached, so. Here's that dribble sound. Still dribbles like new. Listen to that. Oh, I love that. If I had to compare this to another deck that you might own, I would say it definitely feels the same as any of the other more recent Fontaine decks, especially like the Carrots or the new Guest decks. It feels like that too. But if not that, then I would say pick up really any deck that's on crushed stock, so like the Paperwave V1 playing cards. You might even find that this deck feels pretty similar to like the Superfly decks that Gemini puts out. It feels very similar to that. So just very thin, very soft, and feels really good. The cards definitely fare best from top to bottom. This is a pretty soft deck, so I'm not sure how snappy it's going to be, but yeah, it's not very snappy, but it still feels good to do things like the Cyclone. In terms of flourishes, I think that you pretty much know what to expect. It's a Fontaine deck. It's made for cardistry. The simplicity of the dominant feature of the design, which is the white Fs, I think make the deck look classic in flourishes. And it's a little bit, more detailed, a little bit more heart and soul than a typical Fontaine deck. So I also really appreciate that. And there you go. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching today's episode and my review of the Fontaine and the Good Company playing cards. In terms of Fontaine decks, this is definitely one of my favorite at the moment, if not my favorite. I really love the color, I really love the customization, how well done it was, but I also love just the uniqueness. For a Fontaine deck to see something this unique is very refreshing, and it kind of breathes some new life back into the brand. So nowadays with playing cards, you got to do what it takes to stay relevant, you got to do what it takes to keep up the work and the sales, and I think that this deck really did that. If you didn't get this deck, it's because it has not gone for sale online yet. This was only available at a pop-up in New York City. On that note, thank you so much to my good friend and the designer of the Slow Hands playing cards, Nick NISCO, for picking me up some of these decks. Really appreciate it. They came just in time for this review before the holidays, which is great, so thank you. We're getting really close to 2K on this channel, you guys. I hope we can get there before the new year. That would be amazing. And also, once we do get there, I will be announcing the winners of the Jerry's Nuggets giveaway. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I will put that video somewhere here at the end so you can enter before it's too late. With all that being said, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. I know I will. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.